Welcome back to the Golden State with Mates post-game live after the Warriors get their fifth consecutive victory and 12 of the last 14 with a 130-120 victory over the Portland Trail Blazers at Chase Center on Monday night. As I just get the scores and stat lines up here, but another impressive performance from the Warriors. The second half, look, it wasn't great, particularly defensively. They gave up 49 points in the first half. We're up 18, and you thought, okay, maybe they can get a nice blowout victory here. And we could see some of the young guys, Taron Armstrong, Braxton Key, some more Kevin Knox, these kind of players in some garbage time minutes in the fourth quarter. That wasn't the case. The Trailblazers put up 43 in the third quarter. I think they might have got within, was it 4 or 6 at one point there in the second half, but they never took the lead back or anything like that. And the Warriors, it was one of those games where the Warriors were always kind of comfortable and were always going to win, but it was just frustrating that it kind of kept close enough to the point where, Steph and Jimmy had to play kind of all the way through to the final buzzer. So it is what it is. At the end of the day, the final score is what matters, and it was a 130-120 victory for the Warriors, who retain hold of their top 6 spot in the Western Conference standings at the moment. Probably the two players of the night, I think, Gary Payton II, who continues this offensive resurgence, really, from a guy that was a genuine, and I mean genuine, liability on the floor offensively. And I think the Warriors were often playing 4-on-5 on offense sometimes when Gary Payton II's out there. But the last couple of weeks here, really since the Butler trade, and I don't know, everyone seems to have found some juice since the Jimmy Butler acquisition, and Gary Payton II is certainly part of that. He had 16 points on Thursday against the Brooklyn Nets, which I tweeted out at the time was his best scoring output since December 23, 2021. Well, he's just smashed through that and smashed through his career high 26 points in this game. Couldn't believe what I was seeing in the first half. He was 4 of 5 from 3-point range, turned into Steph. I tell you what, GP2 must hate Portland, I think. Like, he had that tenure, obviously signed his current contract, 3-year, $27 million deal with the Trailblazers in the 2022 offseason after the Warriors championship. Didn't last long. Obviously, the way they kind of treated his injury concerns, I don't think GP2 was overly happy with. Obviously returned to the Warriors in exchange for James Wiseman. And look, he's never really been the same again. But what we've seen over the last couple of weeks has been a lot closer to the GP2 that we saw in the 2021-22 championship season. And for him to be so good offensively in this game, hit his 4 threes, went 4 of 6, but also got to the rim and finished as he does. Huge lob dunk from Draymond there in the fourth quarter to kind of punctuate his performance. He was 11 of 16 from the floor. When was the last time you would have seen GP2 take 16 field goal attempts and make 11 in a game? Like, well, you haven't. You just flat out haven't. This was his career high, 26 points. It was a plus 14. If you look at the plus minus, again, single game plus minus, we can always question, but I think it was certainly a valuable stat in this game, with GP2 being a plus 14 and then Buddy Hield being a plus 16. He had 20 points, 6 of 9 from 3-point range. The Warriors went 21 of 41. That's 51.2% from deep as a team. Buddy also had a couple of steals and 7 assists. A really good performance from him, but I actually think it might actually harm the Warriors moving forward, because they really have a kind of Buddy Hield problem here in terms of his production against lesser teams, and that is a concern for me. This was his 8th game this season with 20-plus points, and yet 8 of those have now come against teams that, if the playoffs started tomorrow, they wouldn't be in the playoffs. He's only had 2 games. I think it might have been against Houston and Minnesota, where he's had 20-plus points against teams that would make the playoffs tomorrow if they started. So that's a bit of a problem for me. He tends to, I probably could have told you before this game he'd have a big night, because he tends to beat up on lesser opposition, and that's not something that's going to be able to happen, obviously, in the playoffs, and the Warriors are going to need his production and need some better consistency from him, and we just haven't seen that. He's had a couple of, he had a big performance against Charlotte a week ago. Great. It's against Charlotte, though. Come on. And then obviously more quiet against, the Pistons, who are a decent team on Saturday, and before that against Brooklyn as well. So it's a bit of a concern for the Warriors, but nonetheless a big performance from Buddy Hield in this game. And then, of course, Jimmy Butler. I think he was the two that I was going to mention, Butler alongside GP2 as the two players of the game. Butler, look, he wasn't dominant again from a scoring standpoint, but he did have his first triple-double in a Golden State uniform. That's the first triple-double of any Warrior player this season. He finished with 15, 10, and 10, 3 steals, just continually probing the Portland defense, finding open teammates. The Warriors were really, really good offensively. Really good. 52.9% from the floor, 51.2% from three, as I said. Did have the 17 turnovers, which was a little bit disappointing, but ultimately a very, very good offensive performance. And it needed to be because their defense in the second half, again, giving up 43 points to the Trailblazers in that third quarter wasn't ideal. Deni Avdija, almost unstoppable from a Portland standpoint. 34 points, 16 rebounds, 6 assists. Anthony Simons finished with 32 points for the Trailblazers as well. So Portland really got going offensively in the second half, and thankfully the Warriors were still, able to keep them at arm's length and make sure that this was a comfortable victory here in the final few minutes. Just to get into some of your comments here, FTW Clan says, shout out GP2 career high, Buddy efficient 20 and 7, Moody with an efficient 20, and Jimmy with a triple-double. Curry 4K career threes up next. Yeah, Steph is too short from 4,000 career threes. He was trying to get them up there in the fourth quarter. I think he might have missed his last 3. Still finished 5 of 11 from three-point range. Had his 24 points, but was harassed throughout the night by Tumani Kamara, who's one of the better perimeter defenders in the league. Steph only got 14 shots up, kind of one of those games where, again, Portland kind of loaded up on him and allowed others to get to work. And that's what certainly happened with the Warriors having 4 20-point scorers, with GP2 leading the way. Steph with his 24 and then 20 apiece for Buddy and Moses. Moses was 7 of 10 from three-point range, continues his impressive form, and Jimmy with the triple-double, as we said. Thandex says, Marsh GP2 has been lethal. Don't know, maybe we need to continue with the mask on GP2 because his shooting in that first half was at a level that we haven't seen for a long, long time. I think he started 4 of 4, wasn't he? He was 4 of 4 from deep and then missed his 5th and 6th one, but still had 10 points in the second half. We're still getting to the basket. So a fantastic career-best performance from Gary Payton II. Robbie says, team overall did great. Curious to see how JK will fit in and how he gets minutes. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, Steve only went to 9 guys in this game. Obviously, Kuminga and Podziemski still out. I don't know. I still don't know who's going to be out of the mix. Like, if you look at this game, the Looney minutes still aren't great to me. Like, he had 6 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals. So he was solid, did a couple of good things, couple of not so good things. I think he's still going to have to play some minutes. Guy Santos obviously had a huge performance, was the unsung hero against the Pistons on Saturday. A little bit quieter in this game, had 4 points, 5 rebounds, couple of assists, did have 3 turnovers and 5 fouls, which is a bit of a concern for Guy Santos, given he fouled out obviously late in the game against the Pistons and then has 5 fouls in less than 15 minutes in this game. But, when Buddy Hield, GP2 are playing like this, how do you bring Kuminga and Podziemski back into the mix here? Particularly, Podziemski's okay because he was, part of this role that the Warriors are now on in, being 12-2 over the last 14 games. Pods has been a big part of that. But for Kuminga, who's now not played in 31 straight games, which is quite incredible, how does that, factor into him coming back here and trying not to disrupt things too much and just trying to be additive rather than, him coming back and potentially disrupting what the Warriors have rolling right now? It's going to be fascinating to watch. And it's unfortunate, I think, for him a little bit, because I can see right now, I can see if Kuminga comes back, which the latest from Steve today is that he's hopeful that Kuminga and Podziemski will be back later in the week. And to me, that potentially means Thursday against the Sacramento Kings. We know what's going to happen if Kuminga has a couple of quiet games and the Warriors lose a couple of games. The blowtorch is really going to be centered on him. And that's unfair, I think, but it's also just the reality of just how well the Warriors are playing right now without him. So it's going to be fascinating to see. Again, hopefully he can be additive to what the Warriors are doing right now and not disrupt things too much. Robbie says Guy and GP2 have played well, but JK, of course, has more potential. That's facts, yeah. Knox says, great buddy game. Just wish he can stay consistent. Again, those numbers I read out before. 8 of his 10 20-point games have come against teams outside the playoffs. So that's a concern for me heading into the postseason, assuming the Warriors can get there. Thendex says, I think we're 12-2. This team is different, going to outdo my 20-8. Yeah, all of a sudden the Warriors are like 9 games above 500. It's quite insane. They're 12-2 in their last 14 games. They're 37-28 on the season. And still, even though they've won 12 of their last 14 and 5 straight here, they're still like not locked into top 6 whatsoever. Houston and Memphis both won today, which is slightly disappointing. The Minnesota Timberwolves are still only half a game back. The Clippers won yesterday in overtime, and that was against the Kings. The Kings are maybe the one team, particularly if the Warriors can beat them on Thursday. The game is, if the Warriors can beat the Kings on Thursday, we can kind of open up a little bit of a break there, and then ensure that the worst you could possibly do is the 8th seed, I suppose. But still, you don't want that. You don't want to have to come up against the Oklahoma City Thunder. I feel like the Lakers, with this LeBron groin injury, are probably going to fall to maybe 3rd, if not worse. And so Denver might get the 2nd seed. And so I think that makes it even more important here to make sure you don't get involved in the play-in tournament, because even if you do make it through and get that 7th or 8th seed, you could come up against the Thunder or the Nuggets, which I think would easily be the worst 2 results for the Warriors, or most teams here that are around, the play-in tournament mix, between the Warriors in 6th and the Kings right down in 9th. And then we can probably forget about the Mavericks, even though they beat the Spurs today. They are obviously in some trouble. And then the Suns as well. They lost to the Grizzlies. They're in some trouble as well. So really right now, if the Warriors can beat the Kings, again, as I said on Thursday, then I think the worst they can do is really, 8th. But that still wouldn't be an ideal result. Clearly you want to get top 6. Yorgmoth says Blazers shooting was amazing. They were efficient offensively as well. They did have I feel like they had a lot of turnovers. It felt like the Warriors got a lot of steals in the first half, particularly. The Trailblazers had 19 turnovers. They shot 48.4% from the floor, 42.9% from 3. Avdija 11 of 15, 5 of 7. Simons 12 of 21, 6 of 10. So those 2 guys had it rolling, not too much outside of that. Klingon had 15. I really found it fascinating, the battle between Klingon and Post at the center position. It was really interesting. Like, Klingon, I thought, played pretty well. He had 15, 9 rebounds, 6 assists, 4 blocks. So he was good. But I thought Quinton Post, he had a funny game. I don't recall a guy doing so many great things and so many bad things in the same game. Maybe Buddy Hield at times, but particularly out of a Warrior center who usually, like, you kind of know, particularly given how much we've seen Looney play, obviously, over the past few years. Like, Looney's a guy, like, you just know what you're going to get from him. It's not great necessarily, but Looney's always going to be solid. To have this guy who, I actually think Quinton Post has real potential, like real potential here. I'm not saying he's going to be an all-star or anything like that, but like high-level starter kind of potential. And like more potential than I think, Looney's had a great career, but I think Post has more potential than, Looney does, or Looney has had, previously. Same with TJD. I think the shooting aspect of that and the overall offensive skill part of that is the biggest factor. But we saw some defensive stuff from him in this game, where he had a career high 4 blocks as well, and he's actually starting to protect the rim. And I go back to what we saw his pre-draft comparison, which was kind of Brook Lopez. And Brook Lopez has always been a player to me that's, been fascinating as a potential fit on the Warriors because of his 3-and-D ability at the center position. And if that's what Quinton Post, if he can get in the same realm as Brook Lopez, that's huge for Golden State. And that's kind of what we saw in this game. A guy that offensively can obviously stretch the floor for you. He went 3 of 5 from 3-point range. Inside, he clearly needs some work. He was 4 of 10, so he was 1 of 5 from inside. Missed a couple of bunnies that he should have made, which has been a bit of a theme here for him. He did have his 7 rebounds. Again, in fact, as I checked the stats here, they're only crediting him with 3 blocks. But anyway, regardless, still protected the rim really well on a couple of occasions, not just through block shots, but contesting without fouling. So I thought he was excellent, and he still had his periods or moments where you kind of question yourself, what are you doing, man? Like a couple of the missed layups at the rim, He had one in the fourth quarter there where he just didn't catch the ball, like just dropped the ball off a pretty regulation feed inside. So, a really like up and down game for Quinton Post. But I think some of the stuff he did, some of the great stuff he did really goes to show you that this guy has legitimate potential here for not just being a starting center, but like a higher level starting center for the Warriors moving forward. So super fascinating, no doubt about that. But Klingon was really good for the Blazers as well. Gamer F2P says, I've got to run, but give GP2 and Buddy flowers. More impressed with Buddy's defense tonight. We'll be back later. No worries. Thank you. Cheers for your comments, Gamer F2P. Yorgmoth says, Jimmy triple-double. Yeah, big. It didn't even I don't know, he played really well. Don't get me wrong. He played really well, but it almost I was kind of surprised he had a triple double. Obviously, it was on from early in the game. I think he had something like 7, 4, and 6 early in the second quarter or something like that. So it was always kind of on, but I don't know. It didn't feel like an absolutely hugely dominant Jimmy Butler game. I suppose that's because he only had 15 points. If he had a 20-point triple double, it's probably a different story. But him and Steph. These are the good games where you don't need those guys to necessarily. I know Jimmy had a triple double, but it still felt like he didn't have to do a whole lot necessarily, and he was more, playmaking for others, getting, Moses Moody, Buddy Hield, Gary Payton II looks kind of thing, and those guys are able to capitalize and take advantage. Orlando says GP2. Obviously, he is the player of the game from a Warriors standpoint, no doubt. FTW Clint says, any idea why Draymond didn't close? Well, I actually did think about that at the time. When he came out in that fourth quarter, I think part of it was Post had 5 fouls and they didn't want to close with Post. And then Draymond also needed a rest. And if they were going to take Post out, they need to bring Looney on. And I just don't think they want to play Looney and Draymond together really anymore. I just think they're well past that, and rightly so. Just looking at when Draymond came out in this game, he came out with 5 minutes to go when the Warriors were up by 12, and then Payton got Payton got his 25th and 26th points shortly after. So they're up by 14 essentially when Draymond went out. I just don't think. I think Steve looked at it and thought, we don't need him to come back. We're going to win the game regardless. So Steph and Jimmy can stay out there, but we don't need Draymond to hold off the Blazers here and win this game. So I think that's why he didn't come back. Orlando says GP2 is a better point guard than B-Pots. His strength is at the 2 guard. Not sure about that. GP2's not a point guard. I mean, he had 26 points in this game. Great. But, he's just being spoon-fed by... It's not as if GP2 was out there just cooking everyone, taking blokes off the dribble and stuff like that. He was still getting set up expertly by Steph and Jimmy. And the real difference was, he's always going to, as Steve said in the post-game press conference there, he's always going to find himself wide open, particularly in the corners. He's got to take advantage, and he did in this game. He made his first 4. He was 4 of 6 from beyond the arc, and that's a huge difference-making aspect to the Warriors. It's a huge difference-making aspect to Gary Payton II in terms of how many minutes he can play. He played how many minutes in this game? Just checking here. He played nearly just over 28 minutes. And if he's going to hit his threes, then he can play that much. But if he's not, then he might only be a 12 to 15 minute player, particularly when Kuminga comes back. Clarence says Deni is trying to be a Warrior. I would love Deni Avdija. Legit, I think he's fantastic. I liked him in Washington. And when Portland got him, I was like, geez, that's a sneaky good acquisition. And I wouldn't have minded him at the Warriors. Now, having to give up 2 first-round picks, I suppose maybe that takes them out of getting Jimmy Butler, and I think you'd prefer Butler, and maybe it takes him out of some other stuff trade-wise. But yeah, he's a really, really good player, and I feel like he's a real Warrior-style player. And I think there's a reason why the Warriors were interested in him pre the draft. There was talk of them potentially trading back from pick 2. Obviously, they took Wiseman. There was talk of them moving back and potentially looking at Avdija. There was talk of that trade with the Bulls at the time when Wendell Carter was with the Bulls, and a potential trade of the second pick for the fourth pick and Wendell Carter and potentially taking Avdija at pick 4, I can see why the Warriors are interested. No doubt about that. He feels like a Warrior-style player, can do a bit of everything, versatile skill set, can handle the ball, can move the ball, good playmaker. His shooting has really come along this season, which is a big factor in the fact he's now capable as a scorer to put up 34 points in a game. And he's been red hot here over the last month or so. So I really like him as a player. I'd love him on the Warriors. Not going to happen, though. Long-term piece for Portland, you'd imagine. Orlando says the Lakers are at the 3rd seed right now, and they have a back-to-back with the Nuggets and Bucks with no LeBron. Are they a team that could all of a sudden fall down? I don't think so. Let me just check the standings here quickly. Hopefully these have updated following the Warriors win. I think they have. Yeah, the Warriors 37-28. They're still 3 games back from the Rockets, 4 games back from the Grizzlies, and 4 games back from the Lakers. So, I don't know. Maybe. We'll wait and see. But this LeBron injury, Lakers lose a few in a row all of a sudden. Playing tournament for the Lakers. Could you imagine that? We are getting down to the pointy end, though. Like, the Lakers have, what do we got here? 19 games left for them. The Warriors now only have 17 games remaining at 37-28. Berserkmonk says, if the Warriors could have snagged Deni, that would have been real nice. He's a budget Franz. Is he a budget Franz? Are we sure he's that much worse? Like, if you ask me, I'd definitely take Franz Wagner, but I don't think it's that. Like, I wouldn't. That's underselling him, I think. I think he's a lot closer to Franz Wagner than what we probably give him credit for. But yeah, similar type, 6'9", obviously, and pretty versatile skill sets. Sid says, JK situation feels like the Warriors look at this and see they can lower his market value as well as rest him up and are taking their sweet time. The problem with that is, like, he's going to have to return at some point. What, are you just going to say, yeah, he's out for the season, we're not going to play him again? Like, you're not going to do that. And therefore, you do have to bring him back, because the closer you bring him back towards the end of the regular season, the less time you've got to reintegrate him into the system. Particularly, playing alongside Jimmy Butler, particularly playing alongside Quinton Post. Kuminga's been out. It feels like this Quinton Post thing's been going on for a while, but he's never played with Jonathan Kuminga, right? And so there's a few factors at play here in terms of, the Warriors needing Kuminga to come back and play alongside certain guys he's never played with before. Him just coming back and, seeing how the ankle goes, basically, and trying to ramp up his minutes and stuff like that. So, I don't know, like, they need to bring him back. Hopefully it might be Thursday against the Kings. Hopefully, fingers crossed. But until that's confirmed, then I can't be too optimistic, because, we've had so many occasions here where the potential return date is pushed back. Robbie says, I wonder if in the playoffs Loon just loses his minutes and Dre plays the 5 more. Loon may only play against Jokic if it happens. Good. I agree. I do agree with that. I don't know. As good as Post has been, and he played reasonably well today, and he has great moments, he also has some weird moments, and I just wonder how much they'll use him in the playoffs. I think they need to use him, but how much they do, don't know. Right. We saw he was a little bit deer in the headlights in that big game at MSG against the Knicks last week. Not sure. So therefore, like, does Looney play? I don't know. I don't think Draymond and Looney can play together anymore. So that all of a sudden hampers Looney's ability to play big, reasonable minutes. I don't know. Berserkmonk says Looney's good insurance for when Post gets into early foul trouble. Agree with that. I do ultimately think, like, come playoff time, you still have to use Post. And if things go awry and there's some issues, then Loon, as you say, is kind of the insurance policy either for foul trouble or if he's just doesn't look up to it. But I still think the Warriors, like, their highest upside is having Quinton Post, the 7-footer who can hit threes out there. Like, that is their highest upside squad when that's happening. So it's been a huge revelation for the Warriors. And I was actually impressed with some of his shot blocking and rim protecting stuff today. Orlando says he played point guard this whole game, bringing up the ball. I watched every entire game. He takes care of the ball better as well. I mean, GP2 can dribble the ball, right? He can dribble the ball up. I'm not sure he's getting the Warriors into any of their sets, right? He's not like a pure point guard. Okay, so it's different when you just. I mean, Guy Santos brought the ball up the floor a few times, and I didn't really like that because once the Trailblazers like harassed him a little bit, things can go awry. But yeah, I mean, the Warriors often have different players just, bring the ball up kind of thing, when they're not trying to push out in transition. So, yeah, it's not as if Gary Payton II is playmaking too much for others, let's be honest. Zermo says, what seed would OKC play in the second round? I know they play the 8th seed for the first series. Yeah, it'd be the winner of the 4-5 matchup. So that's the thing. If you wanted, I think ideally the Warriors would probably finish 6th. I do, because then you'd avoid the Thunder in the second round. Although maybe you'd prefer the Thunder over the Nuggets, right? I think ultimately you'd have to play one of the Nuggets or the Thunder in the second round, assuming you advance through the first round. But we're maybe getting ahead of ourselves. Orlando says Deni is a better shooter. He's having what's he shooting from 3 this season? Don't know. It just feels like, especially like some of the off the dribble stuff, which I just didn't think he had in his game necessarily. Now, these stats are not going to include today's game yet. I wouldn't have thought. Just looking at his numbers. I mean, I'm even going to change. What are his numbers over like the last? I'm just going to look at the last like 15 games here because I feel like early in the season he wasn't necessarily doing a whole lot, but he's really come on leaps and bounds. Man, I love that guy. I think he's great. I think he's last 15 games for the Blazers. Avdija is 16.5 points, 35% from 3, just over 47% from the floor, 6.8 rebounds, 4.2 assists. Good player. Very good player. Simon asks, how do you think the team will be with JK back? Well, I'm an eternal optimist, so I hope it will work. But you know what? Like, the further this goes where it looks excellent without JK, the more like nervous I get that. Not the more nervous I get, but the more I know, like I know for a fact that if they lose a couple of games and JK doesn't play well, like it's automatically going to go on to him. And again, it's disappointing and it's not going to be fair, but that's just the reality of what it's going to be. I promise you, that is the reality of what it's going to be. Robbie says when JK comes back, the starting lineup will probably stay the same, but these might be the other two lineups. The Curry lineup with Curry, GP2, JK, Gee, and Post. And the Butler lineup with Pods, Buddy, Butler, Moody, and Dre. Yeah, I wonder if they'll try and fit Kuminga into some of that. Because ultimately, do you want to try and get Kuminga up closer to 30 minutes a game? Because if that's the case, then he's probably going to have to play some minutes alongside Draymond and Butler and Pods. I wonder if you can get some like Pods, Butler, Kuminga, Draymond Post action. That'd be interesting to me. That'd essentially have Butler at the 2. Like Pods, Butler, Kuminga, Draymond Post. Interesting. Orlando says KD will be up for grabs this offseason. Might as well sign and trade Kuminga. It's going to be hard to execute, but possibly. Logan says JK is an X factor. He potentially could bring this team up a level. That's the best case scenario. He's an enigma. He's a real enigma in terms of, I don't know how this is going to go. I'm optimistic, as I said. He could take them to a whole new level where it's like, yep, now they're definitely like legit championship contenders and a real playoff threat. He could also make them worse. And all of a sudden, a lot of the good work they've done here, like we've got to remember, again, they're only half a game up on the Trailblazers in 7th. So, you still don't have the opportunity like to just bring JK back into the mix and you can afford to lose a couple of games. You can't. You literally can't do that. So the pressure is going to be on right away, particularly on Thursday against the Kings. Like if he returns against the Kings, they're still like trying to catch the Warriors, right? And so you can't afford a letdown game and you can't afford just to take your sweet time bringing JK back into the mix and letting him be, at 70, 80% in terms of his production for a couple of weeks. Like, you can't really afford that. Maybe if he's efficient, fine. And if he's not a defensive liability, fine. But if he goes out there and thinks, I really want to get back into my best form, so I'm just going to stuff around and, do my own thing a little bit and take ill-advised shots, and, I've driven to the rim and turned the ball over and now they've got 2 points in transition, like, that's going to be the problem. Berserk Monk says, Suns want way too much for KD. They want a young talent, 3 first-rounders and salary cap relief. Well, the Warriors have the 3 first, and if you want to classify JK as the young talent... Logan says, do you trust Buddy in the playoffs? I don't. Not when you look at the numbers that he's, 8 of his 10, 20-point games are against teams outside the playoffs. Not really. There's way too much of a contrast between the best and his worst, and you just don't want that in the playoffs. You don't want to rock up, if you're Steve Kerr, into a big playoff game and think, well, our chances really are determined on what Buddy Hield shows up today. If good Buddy Hield shows up, we probably win. If bad Buddy Hield shows up, we're probably going to lose. And you just don't want to rely on that, because who knows what he's going to bring, really. Knox says, I think I would want the Nuggets matchup. They've been dealing with AG. Aaron Gordon's been dealing with calf issues all season, and MPJ being an iffy shooter. Jokic and Murray going to get theirs, but I feel like we've got a chance there. I just don't know who's guarding Jokic. Are they just going to go Draymond and then try and see if they can exploit Jokic on the other end? I don't know. Orlando says Curry, GP2, JB, Draymond, Post would be the best lineup. We need JK, Moody, and B-Pods to be the sparks off the bench. Nah, I still prefer. I know GP2 had a great game. I get it. He's been very good recently. I get it. But that's still not enough shooting to me when there's Payton, Butler, and Draymond out there together. There's just not. So I think Moody or Pods has to be. Like, we can't forget, Gary Payton II shot like less than 25% from 3 on the season before this game. Logan says, those games against the Nuggets and Bucks back-to-back is the test for me if this team is ready. Yeah, I mean, it's certainly the test. Ultimately, to me, it's just one game at a time and trying to win every game you play. And fortunately, they've just started off this home trip reasonably well. I think they could have played better in the last 2 games, but at the end of the day, the win's really what matters. And they've got 2 here against the Pistons and Blazers, who are both capable. Like, you could have easily lost one of these games. GSW says Buddy is just way too inconsistent. Orlando says the Suns want JK. Look it up. That is 100% true. GSW says, why does this Kuminga return keep getting delayed? When's he back? He's hopefully back on Thursday against the Kings. Fingers crossed. Doesn't sound like there's been a setback. Just sounds like it's just a severe ankle sprain. Orlando says it's enough shooting. We'll agree to disagree. Okay? We'll agree to disagree. I just don't think, particularly come playoff time, I don't think Payton, Butler, Draymond together is enough shooting. But and like, why is Moody all of a sudden? Moody had 20 points today. Like, why is he out for GP2? I don't know. Red Sox says, could we do what the Lakers did and double Jokic front and back, let the others try to outshoot us? I think that'd probably be you've got 2. If you've got there's no matchup for Jokic, but the Warriors particularly don't have a matchup, right? Like, you're not going to put Quinton Post on him. Looney, maybe, but then you're really giving up some stuff on the other end. So really, you got 2 options. You're going to say, okay, Jokic we're just going to make him try and score every possession, and hopefully maybe from doing that he gets a little bit tired or whatever. Or the other thing is we double him every possession and we dare the Denver role players, or their other guys, Porter, Aaron Gordon, stuff like that. We're going to dare them to make threes. Right. And, that's a gamble, right? But that's what you're going to have to do. You have to come with a calculated gamble against a guy who's, to me, clearly the best player on the planet in Nikola Jokic. But again, we're getting ahead of ourselves here. Robbie says, I think if JK comes back and focuses on defense and off-ball drives, he will integrate just fine. Yeah, absolutely. He just needs to come back and play a role. Like, because he's got the skill set, he's got the athleticism where he can play a really effective role at probably a higher level than what like GP2, Moody, Santos can, right? Because he's just naturally talented. the issue is going to be if, Jimmy and Steph are out there and Kuminga's like, all right, let me post up on what's not really a mismatch and let me go to work and show you what I've got and how I should be getting $30+ million in free agency in the offseason. That's going to be the problem, right? There's going to be times for that, right? And I think having him as another offensive weapon, like there's going to be times where, he does get a mismatch in the post or a mismatch in general and he can go to work and that's fine. But if he tries to do too much, that's where things could become problematic. Knox says, my guess is JK comes back against the Knicks. That's the game after, isn't it? Goes Kings, Knicks, Nuggets, Bucks. Have I got that right? Something like that. Kings, Knicks, Nuggets, Bucks. Close out with the Raptors. Still on track here to go at least 5-2, if not 6-1 on this home trip, on this homestand, I should say. Well, then it says Steph JB Post is enough for the playoffs. Jimmy Butler's not a shooter, though. I mean, he's okay, but teams are going to leave him open from beyond the arc. He didn't take a single three in this game, which is fine. But I just don't think him, Payton, and Draymond is enough shooting out there, particularly in the playoffs. Robbie says JK just can't let that contract affect his game. I mean, the best thing I think for a contract is if you come out and you show you're really, you're a key piece to winning. And so if Kuminga comes back and is a key piece to winning, then I think the contract stuff will take care of itself. Right. I don't think he needs to necessarily show off and, do too many fancy things or anything like that. Just come back. The way Jimmy Butler elevates his teammates, the way Steph Curry elevates his teammates, I think Kuminga could walk into 15 points a night without even trying. Right. And if he rebounds hard, defends hard, does the little things, it's going to take care of itself. Like, that's my advice to him. Again, like, he'll walk into 15 points. Just run the floor hard, right? Take advantage of your mismatches. Hit an open three occasionally. Cut hard. Like, he's going to get 15 points pretty easily if he just doesn't really think about it too much. If we can beat Nuggets and lose the Bucks or vice versa, I'll count that as a win for us. Yeah, back to back. You win one of those two games. That would be my expectation. Well, obviously you'd love to win two, but if you can win at least one of those games, I think that's a reasonable result. Alrighty, guys, I'm going to finish it up there. Another positive performance for the Warriors with a 10-point win over the Trailblazers, 37-28 now on the season. Thank you very much to those of you that have commented. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel already, that would be greatly appreciated. You can follow me at POK252. That's POK252 on X/Twitter. Appreciate you guys that are watching on replay or listening via your podcast feed as well. Logan says, what's your JK prediction? I think he plays well with the second unit. Well, he's going to play some minutes in that mid first and third quarter when Butler and Draymond kind of go to the bench. And then Steph, to me, some of those units, Steph still kind of asked to do too much offensively. And I think Kuminga is going to be really important with that. So, again, I'm optimistic. I think he can walk into 15 points a game. Eventually, he's obviously going to be on a pretty heavy minutes restriction to start out. But it's certainly going to be fascinating to see because it could go either way. It legitimately could go either way. But, if he just plays his role, then I think he can be really effective because, as I said before, I think the biggest thing, he's a naturally talented, more athletic, better player to me than a Guy Santos or I know GB2 had his career night tonight, but, Kuminga's a more talented player than him. So, he's a more talented player than Moody. So it's really going to be a mindset thing with him, I think. Robbie says, JK can play well with Jimmy and Post on the floor. Jimmy's passing and post spacing will be great. I agree with that. It should work well. It should. Whether it does or not, we'll wait and see. Alrighty, thanks again, guys. Much appreciated. We've got a couple of days off here until the Warriors' next game against the Kings on Thursday. If there's any more news on Kuminga, if he's confirmed for that, then I might come back on and do more kind of detailed look at what we could see from Kuminga in his return and moving forward with the Warriors here. If there's any other news, roster-wise, Kevin Knox's contract just finished up after this game, so his 10 days is now officially done. I expect him to get a rest of season contract, but we'll wait and see on that. Other than that, guys, I'll finish it up. Hope you have a great rest of your day. Again, might be an episode out before Thursday's game against the Kings, or I'll definitely be back for a post-game live after that one.